Hi Honors 10, welcome to your very first flipped classroom experience. Today our goal is to review the basic parts of a sentence that you're going to be using as we move toward phrases. Eventually you'll be able to identify the way phrases are acting in the sentence, so today we need to remember the parts of the sentence. The first thing we need to talk about is objects. Objects, direct and indirect objects, are always used with an action verb. The procedure that you want to use to find the direct object is to find first the subject, then the verb, then you need to ask yourself, verb, who or what? So like put the verb in a blank, blank, who or what? The answer to that question is your direct object. You will not always have a direct object with a verb, but if you do, you might also have an indirect object. To find the indirect object, you have to ask verb, direct object, to or for whom. So you have two blanks, one for the direct object, then one for the verb, verb, direct object, then you ask to or for whom, and the answer to that question is your indirect object. You can have a direct object and no indirect object, and the indirect object will always be found in between the verb and the direct object, so it's always in the middle of the sentence. That's for action verbs. Now if your sentence happens to have a linking verb, you have two choices for complements, predicate adjectives or predicate nominatives. These are pretty easy. Predicate adjectives are simply adjectives that are in the end part of the sentence, the predicate of the sentence, that are describing something in the subject of the sentence, so it's separated by that linking verb. The other piece is a nominative. Those would be nouns that are in the end part of the sentence that rename the subject. The only tricky piece here is that we have to watch for linking verbs that don't necessarily sound like linking verbs all the time. If you consider verbs that induce your five sentence, taste, touch, sight, smell, and sound, verbs that allude to those senses could be either linking or action. So you have to consider the way the sentence is working. If you can substitute in another verb that you know is a linking verb, like is or are, then you can be sure that that tricky linking verb is a linking verb. If you can't, then it's probably an action verb and you have to consider your direct object questions.
All right, so when we take a look at this first example for our basic parts of a sentence, you want to first find your subject in this sentence. Mechanic is our subject. Then find your verb. Fixed is our verb. Identify it as action or linking. This one is an action verb. And then ask yourself your direct object question, since this is an action verb. So you say the mechanic fixed who or what. Your answer, car, is your direct object. For the second example, do the same thing. Judges is your subject. Presented is your action verb. The judges presented who or what? They presented the trophy. Now, you have to ask yourself the indirect object question. The judges presented a trophy to whom? They presented it to the winners. Winners, then, is your indirect object. Now notice that your indirect object is always in between your direct object and your action verb. Indirect objects are always in the middle. For our third example, we have our subject is I. It can't be of a hurricane because that's in a prepositional phrase. Our verb is was. Was is a linking verb. So now I know I need to look at predicate adjectives or predicate nominatives. What's the one word that finishes the sentence? I was what? The I was an area. Now ask yourself, is area a noun or an adjective? It's a noun, so I have a predicate nominative. Continuing, I have the snow was heavy. Snow is my subject. Was is a linking verb. What's the one word that finishes the sentence? Snow was what? Heavy. Heavy is an adjective, so here it's a predicate adjective. Now sometimes remember your linking verbs can be tricky. Let's take a look at these two examples. Stew is our subject here. Tasted is my verb. Now I might say that tasted is an action verb because usually it is an action, but here it's actually a linking verb. If I can substitute in an equal sign or another linking verb that I know is a linking verb, like is or are, then I know that whatever that tricky linking verb is a linking verb. So I can say that the stew equals spicy or that the stew is spicy. So I know that this is, in fact, a linking verb, which means that spicy is a predicate adjective describing stew. Now for the last one, chef is my subject. Tasted here is an action verb. It's something the chef is doing. So who or what, the chef tasted who or what. Stew here is a direct object. So if we have a linking verb, it's predicates. If we have an action verb, it's complement.